Welcome back. Today we are talking with Agni Sarkar about ransomware. Agni, great first segment. A lot of good examples in there. The nice thing is a lot of what you were talking about was practical examples, not theoretical. You're not talking from a book. You've actually been in the position of a CISO and talking with CISO. So it's really good to get this different kind of perspective. My first question for you for segment 2 is, who's responsible for all of this?
You mean protecting?
Yeah, protecting the whole, getting us set up, making sure we have response plans. Who's really responsible? I know it's easy to say the CISO, but I've got a feeling there's more than that.
There is far more than that. At the end of the day, the CISO is responsible for formulating the whole defense and the mechanism to respond. That's very, very important. But there are other elements in there. For example, business continuity plays a role. For example, crisis management plays a role. In fact, crisis management has a bigger role in cyber crisis management than business continuity has in there. But to go back to the beginning, the whole premise of what will happen when and who will do what is something that the CISO needs to have multiple stakeholders on a table, and then they need to discuss. For example, and I've met many people who make this mistake. People think that, oh, if we get attacked, one of the first things that you need to do is to isolate. That's the normal practice. So there are two things that can happen. So you got the notice of an attack, and now you are taking the steps to isolate. Unless you have implemented, let's say, something like microsegmentation or ring fencing applications, you will not have a ransomware kill button, or rather a button with a single press of a button, you should be able to isolate a part of the segment. In today's world where everything is virtual, there are still physical networks, because if ransomware does attack and it spreads very fast, if you have backup on the same network, if you've not done your due diligence on moving the backup into something that's immutable, then you are in for an attack. Even your backup would be infected. There are tools and technologies that are available for making your backup better. But the point is, if you get attacked, your first step is quarantine, because that would give you some time before your leadership can respond. As I said, they give you 2 to 3 days to respond, and then the ransom money doubles, right? And chances are that and most people assume that they have backups. So it's not about having a backup. It's about having a backup that you have continuously tested that it works when it is needed, right? So let's say you do have that, and the systems that got ransomware, so to say, when we're in such a state that you can recover now, and it's not something that you have lost everything. You've got something at the backup and you're able to recover, and your backup is not infected, then that's good news. But the first thing that you do is try and quarantine. Now, when you try and quarantine, two things can happen. Either you succeed in quarantine or you don't succeed in quarantine. If you don't succeed in quarantine, then you go to phase 2. But if you succeed in quarantine, two things can happen again. Either a small part of your network is infected, and that's the one that you quarantined, which has no impact on your organization's ability to continue doing business, or it has an impact on your organization's ability to do business. Maybe your ability to deliver products is hampered because that's the network that got impacted, or your ability to provide salaries is not available, it has got hampered, or like in the case that we talked about, the pipeline situation, right, where the billing system got impacted. So it depends on whether your quarantine succeeded or not. But let's step back a little more ahead. Who can disconnect an enterprise? If you really ask me, the CISO can't, unless the CISO has been blessed by the board to do it, which means you need to go to the board and say, look, guys, if tomorrow something does happen, you need to give me a delegation of authority so that I can disconnect the network. I can take that call. If you don't have the delegation of authority, then after you disconnect it, someone can sue you and you're in trouble, even though you wanted to do good. Yeah. Did you want to ask me something?
Yeah, I was just thinking, wouldn't a CISO have that authority already as part of their role to be able to do that?
No.
No?
No CISO has the authority to disconnect a network by definition of the job role. It's not there in the job description. The CISO has the authority to recommend, but there is no one, unless the organization has really thought about it, there is no one person who's authorized to disconnect a network specifically without an impact, without somebody questioning that disconnection. And in any organization, these things happen. If you're on the board, there will be at least 3 people on the board who are going to ask you, who told you to? What was the reason why you disconnected the whole network? Why you couldn't have done it, lesser than that? And there's so many such questions. The point is that while you do what you're supposed to do, you still need to be authorized to do it, right? Because that's the right thing to do. So that's just an example of how much you need to think about it at a board level and prepare for it. Because this is not a technical stuff. This is more, organizational mandates that you need to have. If it is there in a job description, very good. That's the good point. But that's not what happens with most of the CISO fraternity. They don't have that mandate. So now that you succeeded in let's say, quarantining it, suppose your quarantine failed. You tried, you did quarantine it, but the ransomware spread much before you could act on it. In that unfortunate situation, now you need to go to stage 2, which means now you need to get into cyber crisis management. You need to convene your cyber crisis council, and then rather the group of wise old men who are going to come and decide, oh, this is what we're going to do. You're going to get those people in, and they're going to take a decision on what to do next. Now, that also means that you need to have a predefined cyber crisis council who need to come. I'm just giving it a name. You could call it by any name. You could call it cyber crisis management team or whatever, because you can't get access to the board every day. You can only call them 4 times a year at the most. So you need to go to them, get their blessings for starting a council like that or a committee like that, and get your CEO at the top of that council, get a mandate for the CEO to get everything else done. For example, let's say you do find out that, well, in spite of all the protection and the detection that I've done, the investment that I've done, what really got impacted is going to impact us, is going to cost us a loss of face, or the impact is so high that the CEO is not unable to take that risk. In that case, now you need to pay for ransom. And if you have to pay for ransom, then, as I said earlier, someone has to talk to the language of the hacker, which means you need a negotiator, someone who has the experience and the reach to be able to convince the hacker that, you know what, we have this problem, we have that problem. We know you've done a great job of locking it up, but please reduce your ransom amount or give us more time or something like that. So it's something similar to a kidnapping situation where you negotiate with the ransom, with the kidnapper, right? Here you are negotiating with the ransom, with the guy who ransomed you.
Is that person internal to the organization, or do you sometimes have to bring somebody external?
They're experts. They're always experts, and they're external. Sometimes your cyber insurance company, they have links to such people. So you could ask, if you've got a cyber insurance, you could ask them to provide you with a list of negotiators who are widely available in your geography, and you could go in for a retainer with them. Because please remember that when things go wrong, you need that person to be available to you on demand.
Mhm.
And that's where the retainers come in. So which means now you need a retainer to be in place so that you can call on the negotiator when time comes. And if that happens, then the negotiator needs to come in and do some negotiation. But before you do that, we need to know a couple of other things. We need to know that you have anywhere between 24 to 48 hours before you decide that you're going to pay ransom. Which means that when you kick in your cyber crisis management program or cyber crisis council, you need to have done an analysis of what is made famous by COVID-19 as patient zero. Who was the first where the attack happened? And how did that happen? And now what the impact is? Where are we versus where we were on day one? How many systems are impacted? And what's the overall business impact if these are not available by X number of days? So your entire recovery time objective gets impacted by these topics. So, the good old days of BCP where we had an RTO and an RPO we had planned, still relative, because you need your RPO to recover your systems. You need your RTO to recover your systems. But if the systems themselves are encrypted, then the RTO and RPO has gone out of the window by that time. Mm-hmm. And therefore, it's a little bit complex, but you still need to get that. And the time that you have is nothing more than 48 hours. You need to take a call by that time and go to your crisis council and say, guys, we need to pay ransom. Or you need to appeal to the CEO saying that, okay, you take the call, but these are the conditions. It seems like it would be better if we pay ransom versus if we don't. So that's the first time. The second thing
I just want to clarify. So we want to have an assessment to know where we stand within 48 hours, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Maximum. Ideally within, so if you're in India, for example, India has a law that says you need to notify the authorities in 6 hours.
Yeah, there's something like that over here now as well. You
in
can't
Canada? No, yeah. That's okay. But I don't think that's the law in Canada. In Canada, you get a little more time. In India, they started a law that says that, or a regulation, not a law, that says that you need to notify a computer emergency response team in 6 hours if you get cyber attacked. And there are about 20 different kind of attacks listed in that. There's a form. Mm. Now, if that happens, if you get attacked, and God forbid, you got attacked and your customer comes to know first, then you're in a totally different kind of timeline there. If you get attacked and you get to know about it first, you're on a different timeline. If you get attacked, the world knows about it, you're on a different timeline. So one is within the 24 hours, you need to do that. The second assessment that you need to do is, has there been a material breach? Because if there has been a material breach, you need to notify the market. Your market regulator, for example, what is it called in the US? I really don't know, but Wall Street needs to know, or your stock exchange needs to know, SEC needs to know that there has been a breach, and you'll get hit, your revenue will get hit or something like that. You need to let them know, which means that assessment has to go on, which means your CFO has to get involved. And that's another authority you need to get so that you're able to make that assessment. So once you have got these pieces figured out, then okay, these are my dependencies, these are my regulatory exposures. If you are, for example, in the pharma industry, where I was earlier, then you also have the requirement of preparing for what is now called as computer systems validation. Let's say you got ransomware, and then so basically you have a system which has been validated for use in the to be a system with an integrity. Its integrity has been approved by, let's say, the FDA or some other authority to say that yes, this is a dependable system. Because when you sell drugs, you need to be able to have dependable systems which have integrity. And then you got hit by ransomware. You go to your backup, you recover from backup, but you still need to get that validated. So which means that your recovery time, your original, what do you call that? Maximum time, MTPD, right?
Maximum acceptable
Maximum
outage.
tolerable period of disruption
Oh,
was, let's say, 5 days. But you realize that if you have to bring up a quality system through computer system validation, it takes 2 weeks. So your MTPDs just got breached. And that's what I'm saying. Again, things that you need to know before, and you need to plan earlier so that you're able to address this. So once you have conquered these elements, and let's say you do pay ransom, one of the other things is to figure out how you'll get your Bitcoins. Sometimes your law doesn't allow you to pay Bitcoins. Sometimes your law doesn't allow you to pay ransom. That's another problem. But then if your law does allow you to pay in Bitcoins, and if you have some mechanism to pay it, you need to make sure that the negotiator is aware and he or she is able to negotiate that deal and you're able to pay the ransom. And if you're lucky, because sometimes they don't give you the key, even after you pay the ransom. So there is, for example, I believe, I forgot the name of the company, name of the attacker. There is one attacker in the market whose name translates to severe pain. That's their code name. Is it egregor or something like that? Basically, that word means severe pain. So they will take your money and they'll not give you the key.
ooh.
So which means now you are in a bigger trouble. So that's what happens when you get attacked, and that's how you need to think of response. But response is not all, because you need to have. So first is the initial response, right? So we talked about some timelines and all that. The next thing for IT to do, for example, is to find out, even after you recover your system, are there any additional traces of the infection still in your network? And those could be dormant. Those may not have been triggered. So there is that analysis as well. So you need to put time aside for that assessment. It is only after all these things are over and hopefully you've communicated well. And as I said in the last segment, that communication forms a very important part, which again, you need to have a program, just like you have. So for example, you got hit by ransomware. You cannot put it up on a bulletin board in your company and say, guys, we have ransomware. Next thing you know, it's on a Twitter notice somewhere. So your communications need to be very, very clear. And once you're clear about your communications, if you have managed all these elements properly, usually even after you're attacked, you probably will get well through it. But the best thing to do is not to get attacked, which means I'm going back to my original statement. Invest in protecting your endpoints, invest in protecting your network, invest in microsegmentation, invest in data loss protection, because those are the things, and invest in observability so that you know when things are going wrong. If you've done these few things, then you're better prepared than someone else who's standing right next to you. I hope I was able to put together my thoughts properly.
Oh yeah, lots of good information. We've got 3 minutes left. Can you take 2 minutes and give us your response to this question about how do we go about validating these programs that we put in? How do we test this? Any quick ideas on that?
So there is something that you do as a computer it's famously called as cyber war games. So there are software that are available that can simulate a cyber crisis. There's one thing that I forgot to tell you, and that is about investing in the ability to withstand cyber crisis. Because even if you know those timelines are short, that's not what reality is all about. It is entirely possible that you could be down and out for a month.
True.
You need to be able to invest in abilities to withstand that period by continuing to do certain things from other mechanisms. Maybe, for example, if your gate pass generating system got ransomware, You need to be able to make manual gate passes and go ahead. If you're in a shop, and if you're in, let's say, in a retail industry, your billing systems got affected, you should be able to do a manual billing and make sure that the customers have all gone out for the day so that you're able to take corrective action. The ability to withstand is something that most people forget, and that's very important. But coming back to your point, um, there are many of these things that you can do, and whatever when you plan for the ability to detect, to defend, to withstand, and to respond or recover, you need to have all of these exercised like you exercise business continuity. So you need to check all of these, because processes change, systems change, your company invests in new systems every time. You need to make sure that you are doing a cyber war game, if that's what you want to call it. You can call it by any other name. You could call it cyber crisis simulation or something like that. But you need to do that at least every 12 months, if not sooner. Some companies I know about, they've been my customer, they do this upon every change so that they're always updated. So they do one exercise when they change and another when they do it annually. I hope
Well,
I answered the question.
that answers it very well. Thank you very much. Agni, that was great. A lot of good information. I think a lot more detailed and a lot more guidance on some things here that I don't think a lot of other people are conveying very well. And you did a great job of letting us know all these different aspects of ransomware. So thank you very much.
Thank you too. And as I said, now I'm a CISO advisor. I come with a whole lot of experience. So if there's someone who wants to reach out to me for help, I'm more than happy to contribute.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your time and expertise today, Agni. I really appreciate it. And everyone watching and listening, stay prepared, everybody. If you liked that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.